In 2014, hydrophones near the deepest point on Earth picked up a sound unlike anything in any scientific catalog, described later as sounding almost like a frog burping in space. Fewer people have ever reached the bottom of this trench than have walked on the moon. Some stories were never meant to be found. Challenger Deep, part of the Mariana Trench in the western Pacific, is the deepest known point on the entire planet. Nearly 36,000 feet down, first sounded and named by the British survey ship HMS Challenger back in 1875. At that depth, the water pressure is roughly 8 tons per square inch, enough to instantly crush almost anything not specifically engineered from the ground up to withstand it, submarines included. For nearly a century after Challenger first measured it, no human being had ever seen the trench floor with their own eyes. It remained, for generations, a number on a chart rather than a place anyone had actually visited. That changed in 1960, when Jacques Piccard and Don Walsh descended together in the bathyscaphe Trieste, a small, heavily reinforced steel sphere built specifically to survive the crushing pressure waiting for them below. On the way down, one of the outer window panes cracked loudly under the immense strain. They continued the descent anyway, reaching the bottom safely, spending barely 20 minutes there before beginning the long, slow ascent back to the surface. In that brief window at the bottom, they reported something scientists at the time considered nearly impossible. What looked like a flatfish, moving calmly along the sea floor, in conditions many researchers believed too extreme to support any complex life at all. For over 50 years after that historic dive, almost no one returned to the trench floor. It sat largely unvisited and unmonitored, one of the least observed and least understood places on the entire planet. Then, in 2014, Noe hydrophones positioned near the Mariana Trench, part of a network built originally to monitor undersea earthquakes and volcanic activity, picked up a strange repeating sound, a low groan sliding sharply into a metallic twang, unlike anything already cataloged in the agency's extensive sound library. Researchers ran the recording against every known biological and geological signature they had on file. Nothing matched cleanly. With no better term available, they started calling it, informally, simply the biotwang. What made it stranger still was the pattern. The sound kept recurring at fairly consistent times of day, over and over, which pointed toward deliberate animal behavior rather than a single one-off geological event. For a sound this strange, coming from a place this unexplored, the obvious question wasn't really what made it. It was what else down there has never made a sound we've actually managed to catch. Noe acoustic researcher Ann Allen led the effort to identify it, cross-referencing the recording against known whale calls in the region over months of patient analysis. The source turned out to be a bride's whale, a real, known species, just poorly studied acoustically until this point. Allen herself put it plainly. Anyone unfamiliar with whale calls would never have guessed an animal made it. Case closed, officially, biological, not artificial, not unknown in the sense the headlines implied. A real animal, making a real and very strange sound. The whale explanation accounts for a great deal. The timing matched known bride's whale migration patterns in the region, and the acoustic profile lined up once researchers finally had something concrete to compare it against. It doesn't fully explain why, after decades of hydrophones monitoring the Pacific, this specific call had never been documented before 2014, a newly learned behavior, or simply a sound no one had been listening closely enough, at the right depth, to catch until then. And it doesn't change the larger, still true fact underneath the whole story. In over 60 years since Trieste's first historic dive, only a small handful of missions in total, including one solo dive by a film director in 2012 using a custom-built submersible, have ever reached the trench floor at all. We genuinely have more complete, detailed maps of the moon's surface than we do of the deepest place on our own planet. Some stories were never meant to be found. This one turned out to be a whale, but it took decades of listening to a place we've barely visited to even ask the question. Tell me in the comments, what do you think is still down there, making sounds nobody's caught yet? Subscribe to the Unburied. The ocean files continue from here.